You're listening to The Disabled Employee, a lived experience podcast where young disabled people share their experiences with the workforce. All right. Welcome back to The Disabled Employee, episode 2. We are the representatives from the CYDA Youth Council, and this is a project on behalf of the TRIM network. And today we're here to talk about being within your job and things that might go wrong for you as a young person with a disability. So I'm Thanh. For today, I'm the host of this podcast. I'm fully blind and currently a student, and I was diagnosed as a child with full vision impairment, so I don't get any light perception.
I'm Britt. I have a physical disability called Ulrich muscular dystrophy, which is a rare form of muscular dystrophy. I was diagnosed as a child, and I have been a full-time wheelchair user for pretty much half my life now. I also have severe ADHD.
Hello, my name is Dureece. I'm 25 years old and I am also a student. I live with a dissociative condition called DPDR, which means depersonalization, derealization disorder. I was diagnosed around 21, 22 years old, but I've been living with my condition since I was about 15, 16.
That's just a quick intro about us. And to get into today's episode, we'll mainly be talking about accommodations within the workplace and when you're sort of midway through work and you're trying to navigate handling accommodations and obtaining them. Also talking about social dynamics within the workplace around your disability and how to navigate those situations, especially around able-bodied people. And then finally, we'll be covering general topics of discrimination within the workplace. So I just want to start everyone off. Britt and Dureece, have you faced any barriers in obtaining your accommodations within the workplace? And I guess in extension to that, do you feel like people's social attitudes change towards you because of your disability and accommodations?
Barriers I think I've faced in the workplace is my inability to recognize what accommodations I actually need. Growing up, I had a lot of internalized ableism. Being eldest daughter and having the physical disability and lots of responsibilities, I always felt like I had to push myself and not be a burden in the workplace and colleagues because of school. So I didn't know what I could ask for or even if I could ask for it. And I felt like I really had to push myself to go the extra mile to make up for what my disability meant and to not be an impact rather than needing assistance. I think my biggest obstacle was myself, to be honest.
Do you think that hampered you from actually asking for accommodations within the workplace?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I always felt like I had to go the extra mile to prove myself rather than actually ask for assistance that could have helped me do my job better.
I definitely found that. I mean, having that internalized ableism, it's crippling, especially when you've already started the job and it almost feels like, oh, they're willing to give me a chance. And now if I screw up, that's it for me. But for me, I think that aspect of not recognizing what you need, that can come up a lot for me when I'm actually midway through my job. So, for example, when I worked at the Grand Prix last year, one of the big problems was part of my role was checking tickets. And when you can't see the ticket, it's kind of difficult. Then obviously I guess the big thing that we just discussed was tackle my shame and my needing to feel like I need to prove myself and be good and not be a burden. That was really the first step to then asking, hey, how do I do this? And then obviously it was everything else, which is quite difficult. Dureece, what do you think?
So my experience has been more the opposite. Mine has been me being like, yeah, you know what? I think I deserve a little bit of extra slack here. And then nobody responding well to that. Now, my experience has been a little weird. So I've had a pretty terrible experience with getting workplace accommodations and also a fantastic experience. I'll start with the bad. So it's kind of weird for me though, because I didn't get diagnosed with a disability until I was like 21, 22. It was like in the middle of like the start of COVID.
It's super late.
So
that's super late, actually, considering.
That's late. Yeah, like I've been living with my condition since I was about 15, 16, and it got progressively worse over time. I'm sort of plateaued within the last couple of years, but prior to diagnosis, I had several jobs. I struggled to keep up with a lot of workplaces. I was always dissociating in the middle of tasks. I had learning difficulties. So starting any job or having being asked to change roles in the middle of my, term somewhere would be really hard for me. And oh boy, my colleagues did not appreciate that. I got quite a lot of mistreatment, like people always getting really angry at me. And like I can understand that if I'm slowing down the flow of work, maybe that could be a bit frustrating, but I feel like everyone's reactions were disproportionate. And I just asked, hey, could I just get a little bit of extra time to do this? Do you mind if could you please explain X, Y, Z again? Those don't even feel like particularly strong requests. It's like, just give me a little bit of leeway. But no, no, I was responded to quite poorly. It was a little bit weird because I wasn't aware that what I was dealing with was a disability. I thought this is just kind of how I am because it was so hard to get diagnosed. So I wonder, would my colleagues and managers across all these jobs have reacted differently if they knew that I was struggling with a medical condition, not whatever they thought was going on? Like I'd get called lazy, I'd get called, slack, an idiot, useless, all these dead weight, all these horrible things
That's
when I was
awful.
really trying my best.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awful. And it's
so
sort of like, would things have been different for you if you had that diagnosis to almost explain to everyone, like, this isn't just me being me. This is
yeah,
because of something that I can't control.
Britt speaking,
yeah,
it's actually really sad that if they did know about your disability, if they did treat you differently, because no one should deal with that in a workplace anyway.
yeah, well, yeah,
You shouldn't have had to have a diagnosis to be treated with respect.
yeah. And it does make me wonder, like, if they're willing to treat someone like that, I think if I told them, oh, the reason I'm maybe a bit slower to pick up on certain stuff is because of a disability, would knowing I had a disability make a difference? But at the end of the day, the idea of being given accommodations was just like baffling to them. They're like, why? You don't know, you don't
Yeah.
deserve it, you don't need it.
I guess
Um,
that's the thing to keep in mind as an employer. It's that if even if you don't know that someone has a disability, because so many disabilities are invisible and maybe you just don't know, just keep an open mind and don't instantly shut people out because they're not performing it to the standard that you would expect every other person to do so. If they are consistently not meeting what you think is a good standard, maybe it's because they have something else in their life that should be considered. And maybe it's just about sitting down with them and understanding that accommodations don't have to apply to someone who just has a diagnosable disability. Like maybe you should just consider having accommodations for anyone who needs accommodations. That's just,
But yeah, so on the flip side, with my current job at CYDA, the organization that produces podcasts, shameless plug.
woo!
Um, God, that was so cringe. I'm editing that out. Um, um, if you're listening to the final cut in this and that part's still in there, it's because the other two have pressured me to keep it in. Um, my current job at CYDA, I've never had issues asking for accommodations at all. And a big part of that is the fact that I am proactively asked if I need them. And that's a really big thing. I think what Britt was talking about, like the idea of not knowing what accommodations you need or being afraid to ask for them, I think that's massively exacerbated by workplaces like the one that I was at before. Asking for accommodations is just, aggressively rejected. You're not going to
Britt
want to do it
speaking,
again in the
that
future.
that started at school for me.
Oh God.
So that
Same.
started at school for me, which is why I was so hard to ask for accommodations in the workplace. It was exacerbated by the treatment I got for school and feeling as though I was um like a burden to my teacher aides.
It translates over.
Um,
I agree with that. A lot of my
yeah,
internalized ableism is based off of outside experiences that then translate to the workplace, which is just, it's such an unproductive, like, it's something you never want to deal with because you also
mm.
have every other part of employment to deal with, and they're like, I can't have this getting in my way, not again.
For me, CYDA was the turning point too because I actually I worked on a research assignment with CYDA before getting my current job, and the accommodations and the support that they provided me that I didn't even know I needed
Mm.
helped me learn what I needed to ask for in my current work environment.
For me, I think in high school, when I first started living with my condition, I'd ask for accommodations. I'd ask for, extra time to do things. I need like when I'm really dissociating, I just can't process information. I'd ask people to repeat stuff or explain it in a different way, and they just groan and roll their eyes. But a lot of the time, they're just like, "No, keep up. You're falling behind. This is on you." But then it was the workplace that completely beat it out of me, where I was just
Mm.
like, okay, I started feeling guilty for it, which is ridiculous because
Oh, the
you should never feel guilty for something you have no control over, especially a disability. It is not your fault. But I started believing that I was somehow like a problem. When I started working for CYDA, my current job, um, shameless plug, it was almost weird being accommodated so much. Like it almost felt like a trick. Like, wait, am I meant to do this? I
I
didn't.
think I literally cried when my first assignment was CYDA
yeah.
because of how well and supported I felt. I was constantly talking about it.
I mean,
Yeah.
mine was because when, like with past employees, if especially midway through, so not just like the setup, because usually sometimes the setup is fine for me, but midway through the job when there's a new task that's introduced that maybe I can't do, and I bring it up as an accommodation. So I've beaten back the internalized ableism, and all of that guilt, and I've asked. Sometimes what they've just been really inconsiderate. They just want an instant solution. And so they'll just delegate the task to someone else, or they'll just say, you don't need to do it, don't worry about it. Instead of actually trying to make accommodations and see if I can actually do it and maybe even develop that skill that maybe I just don't have yet. I guess also just to note, we're not just saying this because, we're representing CYDA right now. It's honest, on my part anyway, and I'm sure on Britt and Dureece's part. But for CYDA, like, if something ever came up that I was a bit unsure of if I'd be able to do it because it's so visual, they gave me the chance to try, and they were open to trying to navigate that new experience for me. And that hasn't ever happened before in a workplace. It's always been either a shutdown of we just don't have the resources or we don't really know how to navigate that, so we just won't. But CYDA hasn't done that, which I really appreciate, especially because I know sometimes things can be really high pressure and there's time frames to meet and stuff. Do you guys have any further advice on how to handle these situations and how to handle navigating asking for your accommodations?
Sit down with yourself. So when I went into my new workplace, it wasn't online like Cider is. It was in a physical office, and I now have my own little office, and I work one-on-one with children with disabilities.
That's so cute.
Um, yeah, I love it. Um, and I actually get to see them face to face and work with them. It's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, you're interacting with real life people?
I know how I didn't know what accommodations that I'd actually need in an office because I haven't had disability accommodation since school. Um, for anything physical or mental. And I'm late diagnosed ADHD only in the last 2 years. So I had no clue what I was doing. But my work stepped up. Um, they noticed that I was asking a friend and a colleague to help me make a cup of tea. And they're like, Britt, what do you do at home to make a cup of tea? I'm like, oh, I have this really cool kettle. Next thing I know, next week I'm in the office. They have my really cool kettle sitting at the cup of tea station. So I could make my own cup of tea.
Huh.
Um, yeah.
Which is awesome. Was that through job access?
No, they just went out and bought it for me.
Okay, that's such a slay.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like translating what you do in your natural environment and seeing obviously you're in this whole new environment, maybe seeing how that can be applied to your workplace, the things that you do at
exactly.
home. I
Then
mean,
they also got me a high-low desk. And then we went through job access and they're getting me a lighter weight laptop. The
yo, these
job
people
access
sound awesome.
because I can't lift my current laptop to be able to cart it to work from home.
Hmm.
So they're getting me a lighter weight laptop, which is more like a Microsoft Surface Pro, because I can't write physically without hurting my wrist for long periods of time, so I can electronically note take.
So just for everyone to know, there are avenues that if you need those other resources and assistive technology like that, there are avenues you can go down and you're as an employee or an employer, you can go down via Centrelink through Job Access, which is a funding body that can actually assist you in in funding those assistive technologies so that you can actually work to your fullest potential.
And
Um,
if you apply yourself as an employee rather than having your employer go on behalf of you, anything that job access purchase for you, you get to take home with you when you leave that job, and you get to keep for your next workplace.
yeah, I didn't know that. So I just
Yeah,
found that out just then.
Well, there you
it's
go. There you
amazing.
go.
So, hey, I'm learning on this podcast too. For me, it was having a contact person in the workplace that really helped because I felt comfortable around certain people, certain managers and supervisors. And I guess going in, I established a level of contact with a supervisor and I could text her and be like, hi, this is the problem that I'm having. And because I knew that she was going to be willing to sit down with me and have a chat about things. Um, and so I really found that having that main contact was really useful. And then also having other people around me that I could sit down with, like friends and family, sitting down with them and kind of saying, like, hey, I don't really know how to ask for this, which also helps to battle that internalized ableism because there is no one like your best friend to call you out when you're saying, I don't think I deserve this, or maybe I'm asking for too much. And they will be like, no, this
Yep.
is you can't control this. You need this to assist in working as a person with a disability. Um, but yeah, stuff like job access, I wish I knew about sooner because yeah, I'm still learning about it. Dureece, do you have any final thoughts on this?
If I'm going to ask for not even an accommodation in the workplace, but I think you can use this there, is if I need something I feel guilty about it, or someone's making me feel guilty about it, I'll just like say it out loud to myself. Like, does this sound like too much? Does this actually sound like a lot? And a lot of the time when you say something out loud, or say it to a trusted friend, even before you hear their opinion, but saying it out loud makes you realize how not ridiculous it is. Like, oh, that sounds like nothing. And a
Mm.
lot of the time, that's the reaction I get, like from my colleagues at CYDA, when I ask for accommodations, they're just like, yeah, sure. Well, why not? Why wouldn't we? It's almost like a look of confusion. Like, why wouldn't I let you have that?
I want to really hone in on that social dynamic aspect that Doris you've already sort of touched on, really.
I'm sorry, I zoned out. Please repeat. I'm
Um,
sorry, you're
it's
dealing with two people that disassociate.
it's okay. It's the
I
do you
You're
feel like you're treated differently in the workplace because of your disability in a social context?
No, yes and no. So when I had my accommodations met, all of my colleagues were extremely happy for me for getting them met and seeing the independence I had. Also took a little of a workload off of them where they didn't have to assist me for things or make sure someone was around too. So having a properly set up environment really assists taking the workload a little bit off of them.
Do you feel like just talking about your disability in general and navigating those discussions, did you ever have any difficulty with that?
My physical disability, no. When it comes to my ADHD, because it's very new to me, I do still struggle with it. And having more invisible accommodations met. For my physical disability, no.
That's awesome. I'm really glad.
Was really easy because we are a disability organization and anyone that works there has someone in their life with a disability.
Yeah, that
Pretty
helps.
much. It's pretty much a prerequisite. You have to have someone in your life with a disability or be around someone with a disability
Or you won't get
to
let into
work
the cool
there.
club. Therese, I guess speaking on the subject of invisible disabilities, how do you think you've navigated socially within your workplace, considering that?
Again, I kind of touched on this a little bit before when we are talking about accommodations, because I never stay on topic.
Hashtag
But
Zoomer.
also it's kind of weird for me, like with the other stuff, pre-diagnosis, I wasn't able to disclose that I had a disability, and my colleagues didn't know about it because I didn't. So that might have affected things a little bit. I started telling people, like in my last two jobs, hey, I've got like ADHD or something. I just didn't know what to tell them. It's like, I'm in the process of trying to get diagnosed. I might need a little bit of help. And people were just like, I don't care. Like,
Oh,
that's not my problem. Work
so
harder.
oh,
And then post-diagnosis, I might be aware of the fact that I have a disability, but I'm working at an organization that specifically advocates for disabled people. So of course they're going to accommodate me really well. And they're going to treat me very well, which is lovely. I enjoy that. Um,
I mean, for me, people have always been cautious, even at school and at uni. People are always really cautious to approach me because they can see my disability. And because of that, I've almost had to account for it by being more outgoing, by being the funny one, by being
Mhm.
the smart one. And I almost had to simplify and reduce my disability down to almost treating people like with kid gloves, right? So that
Mhm.
they can understand my disability and feel comfortable with asking questions about it. Um,
Mhm.
and sort of making jokes to break the ice about my disability. I think if we have any final advice on that, that would be great. I mean, for me, it's mainly give yourself breaks and give yourself time to take it in. For me, stepping outside of work and giving myself time to breathe when I was in a primarily able-bodied environment at work, being gentle with myself and taking time to us to almost like take in the amount of social interaction that I've had to deal with throughout the day, that really helped. But I would love to know what you guys have found to help you navigate those situations.
Unfortunately, I don't have a very optimistic thing to say about this. You know, however I navigated those sort of social dynamics, I don't think I ever did. I didn't think I'd experienced discrimination or mistreatment as much as I did. Whether or not these people knew that I had a disability or not doesn't really matter because, I wasn't diagnosed at the time. I think it's just very disappointing at how harsh a lot of people treat their fellow humans. Um, but where I'm working now, I get treated fine, so I don't really have anything to worry about.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to work for CYDA forever. So what other workplaces I end up experiencing in the future, I don't really have a game plan for that yet. I am a little worried about that, terrified about how my condition is going to be received there. But we'll see when that comes around. Who knows? Maybe I'll refer back to your answers on this podcast for advice.
Valid. I feel like that's so normal, and I feel like that nervousness never really goes away.
I think the
Yeah.
one thing I would say is like don't stop asserting your rights and don't stop asserting what you're entitled to because I think that's where I fell off like around like 18 or like 19, 20-ish, like 20, 21-ish. I got so used to being getting pushed back that I stopped asking for accommodations. I stopped
Hmm.
asserting like, no, what I'm asking for is not unreasonable. You definitely have the ability to make this adjustment for me. I stopped asking and I probably shouldn't have done that. But I'm hoping that with how well I've been treated at CYDA, I'm hoping that I can take this experience with me into my future jobs and be like, well, no, 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 I know you can do this for me because someone's done it before.
I really do
That
believe you can. I think you
that's
can.
really great to hear, Doris.
Sometimes it's just about coming to terms with your own disability before you can really properly discuss it with other people, and that's okay.
The
Um,
the other things I would say is prepare yourself. So mentally before work, my partner knows he's not allowed to speak to me.
hmm.
Um, I have to get in the zone to go ready for work. Um, I know that sounds really mean, but I just sit there and drink my cup of tea in utter silence, and he kisses me on the forehead before I walk out the door.
Oh,
Cutie.
oh,
But then he makes sure I have my noise cancelling headphones. I make sure I have my loop earplugs, my glasses, my fidget toys in my bag. Um, I use all of my own little accommodations that I just randomly do at home, and I take them into work with me. And my workplace knows that when I see these devices, they see these devices that I'm struggling. So they change their attitudes and um, demeanor towards me to be a bit gentler.
Hmm.
So those are some cues that we use that help. Having open, honest conversations with your employers, whether that's verbally or in an email or um, things like that, just prepare yourself, be gentle with yourself, and open, honest communication.
hell yeah.
What she said.
One last thing I would want to say to anyone who's dealt with any of the issues we've described, because like it can be very disheartening, it can be very defeating. I sort of a lot of these things we've discussed, when I experienced them, I like shrank back. I just went into my shell. I turtled, as they say. Is that a thing, turtled? I don't know. Maybe no one does say
I don't
that.
know if it
It
is
is.
a thing, but it should be.
It is now. I'll make the Urban Dictionary entry tonight.
Amazing.
But yeah, no, I'd recede and I'd stop believing in myself. I'd stop, standing up for myself, as I mentioned. When that happens, or before that even has a chance to happen, if it hasn't happened to you yet, surround yourself with positive voices. Surround yourself with people who assert and affirm that, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with asking for what you need. Your disability is not a problem. It's just one of many aspects of who you are. Because surrounding myself with people like that, like my girlfriend, my friends, my housemate, has been wonderful for me. And it's good to have that counterweight to when I do experience some kind of discrimination or mistreatment or someone scoffing at me because of something disability related. I can think back to all the positive voices who push against that. And that's what keeps me going. When you face that stuff, remember that there's people out there who do care about you and do not agree with that. And if you don't have anyone like that in your life, honestly, look online. Like I used to, before I really had like a circle of friends who really accepted and, respected my disability, I'd look at communities of people online and like I'd go on Reddit and type, hey, does anyone have this problem? And I'd see heaps of people also who had experienced it or knew someone who did, and they're like, dude, you got nothing to worry about. Just know that there's people out there. Like positive counterweights.
Apply to join CYDA's leadership program.
True.
CYDA, isn't that like a really good like disability advocate group? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. No, we
CYDA?
don't know.
I don't know her, but she sounds great.
Surround yourself with positive voices against negative ones. It sounds cheesy. It sounds like some good vibes shit, but it works. It's tried and true.
Find your community.
Find your community,
village.
give yourself space, and give yourself time to appreciate those people because that's how it should be with everyone else.
Yes.
That's it. That's a wrap for today's episode. This has been the Disabled Employee episode 2. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast was brought to you by the Dream Network, a program that bridges the gap between disabled job seekers and employers and aims to help disabled youth build the skills and confidence they need to enter the workforce. The Dream Network is a program run by Children and Young People with Disability Australia, also known as CYDA.